This video is a response to Kind of Teching and King of Lightning's latest Bleach reviews, because they both brought up a complaint with the recent Bleach chapter where they criticized the fact that Kensei and Rose, they use Bankai, but they never used their hollow masks in conjunction with Bankai like Ichigo did, lots of times after he was finally able to bring, Zangetsu, yeah, quotation marks. I'm just going to call him Hollow Ichigo just to keep this conversation not confusing for everybody. So once he tamed Hollow Ichigo, he was able to use his Hollow Mask in Bankai and Shikai, and none of the other visors are ever seen doing anything like this except in Shikai or when their swords are completely sealed. And a lot of people are criticizing the fact that Kubo is making characters forget that they have these abilities, and that they're kind of chalking up the bad writing. Now I will tell you that Kubo has done some bad stuff in this arc, like the whole Bankai, once a Bankai is broken, you can't repair it thing. That just opened a whole bunch of plot holes, and admittedly he hasn't done every character as well as I hoped he would, especially Komamura, who's getting kind of badass, and then that lasted maybe a few weeks, I guess. But regardless, this video is something... It is just me kind of giving you guys my theory on why the Visoreds aren't able to use their Hollow Mask in Bankai form like Ichigo is able to. Now, the big difference between all of the Visoreds and Ichigo is that the rest of the Visoreds, Shinji, Rose, Love, all these other guys, their Bankai, aka Zanpakuto, and their hollows are completely separate sources of power. They are not connected at all. Whereas Ichigo's Zanpakuto is his hollow. Hollow Ichigo is technically Zangetsu, his Zanpakuto, and his hollow abilities. And they basically come from the same power source. And, he does have Quincy powers, but they haven't even come into play in the series until recently. But for all intents and purposes, Ichigo's Zanpakuto powers, Soul Reaper powers, and his hollow powers all come from Hollow Ichigo, because Hollow Ichigo is both his Zanpakuto and his hollow at the same time. Now, I think the reason for why... there are a couple of theories as to why I don't think the Visoreds are able, or why they choose not to use their masks in Bankai. I think it can be chalked up to either energy consumption, or the fact that they're afraid that their hollows might kind of go rampant. What I mean by energy consumption is the fact that Bankai has been stated to be a very energy-taxing kind of thing. Byakuya stated when he was explaining, kind of the basics of Bankai, is that Bankai takes a shitload of energy to activate, and it takes a lot of energy in order to properly maintain. And this is true for almost every Bankai except Ichigo's. Like Ichigo's Bankai, the whole thing with his Bankai is that it compresses all of that power, and he's able to basically hold all the massive energy of Bankai in a small sword, which allows him to stay in Bankai for longer periods of time. No other captain is ever seen doing this. Almost whenever a fight is done, a captain immediately deactivates Bankai. Ichigo, on the other hand, was able to keep Bankai activated for months. Like, counting his Dangai training, Ichigo kept his Bankai activated for 4 months straight, and it didn't hamper his abilities at all. But now I'm kind of going at another thing. But my point is that that's the big difference between Ichigo's Bankai and the Bankai of all the other Visoreds. All the other Visoreds' Bankai is like a standard Bankai, where it drains a lot of energy. And the way I see it, Bankai is like Super Saiyan, and the hollow powers are like Kaioken. And when you use these powers just by themselves, you get, the best result of that power. Like when Goku was using Kaioken to his fullest abilities, it was, great. Sure, Kaioken and Super Saiyan can drain his energy, and they can tire him out, but for the most part he was able to use them both efficiently and in a great way when they were separate things. Now, this is I'm just kind of using these as metaphors, unless you guys don't get it. But the way I see it is that if Bankai is Super Saiyan and Hollow Powers is Kaioken, then Super Kaioken where he combines Super Saiyan and Kaioken into one form is like combining Bankai and his Hollow Mask. I think that the rest of the Visoreds trying to combine these two completely different sources of power would result in either huge spikes in energy. Like, I think that the amount of energy required to maintain such a form and to even use it for attacks would just have to be insane. You would have to have an insane amount of Reiatsu in order to control that kind of thing, especially because they're not separate powers. Remember, Ichigo's Hollow and Bankai power, Zanpakuto powers, come from the same source. These two are completely different things, and trying to use them in conjunction, I feel, would probably, be very taxing for the Visoreds. And you could make the argument that if that's so taxing for them, why are they able to use their masks in Shikai? Well, I think it's because Shikai really isn't that much of an energy drain when you really think about it. I think that Shikai doesn't take a lot of energy to activate, maybe next to none if you really master your Zanpakuto, and it takes next to no energy to maintain. I don't think it takes any energy to maintain, because Ichigo, again, is able to be in Shikai constantly, and it never seems to hamper or drain his power. So Shikai really isn't that taxing of a power, but Bankai is a completely different thing. Bankai is you pushing your Zanpakuto and your Soul Reaper powers to the absolute limit in order to defeat your enemy. And once you're already pushing one power source to the limit, trying to add another completely different power source to that is either not going to work, or it's going to be such a draining thing that it's not going to be worth it. Because, like I said, the rest of the Visoreds, their Hollow and Zanpakuto powers do not come from the same power source. When Ichigo just activates Bankai, he's using maybe 50% of his real Zanpakuto's power. Once he puts the mask on, he is technically using the full power of his Zanpakuto, and in conjunction with his Hollow, because they come from the same power source. And that's the big thing you gotta remember. This is why I think that Ichigo is the only Visored that has been able to use Bankai and his Hollow powers in conjunction, is because they do come from the same power source, and him using them together is basically him using the full extent of his Soul Reaper powers. Now, all the other Visoreds trying to do this, I think that would just be really taxing for them. It would be, like, if you've seen Dragon Ball Z, you know the move where Goku activates Super Saiyan and then Kaioken, and he calls it Super Kaioken. And he activates this for maybe 5 seconds and uses it for a single attack, and after he did it, he immediately deactivated it, and it immediately drained a lot of his power, and it left him kind of exhausted. And, like, say what you want about Goku, but Goku is a smart guy. Like, Goku, I think it did cross his mind, like, what happens if I combine Super Saiyan and Kaioken, and I do think he kind of tested that thing out. But then he saw that the energy drain and the strain on the body would just be way too much, and it just wouldn't be worth it. And I think that's the reason why he just completely got rid of Kaioken from his repertoire after he achieved Super Saiyan. And I think that the same kind of logic can be applied to this. I think that the Visoreds trying to use two completely separate sources of power at the same time and pushing them to their limit would either result in one power not working at all, the whole thing just completely backfiring on you, which would be like exhaustion, not being able to fight anymore, or it could happen to what happened to Ichigo, where your Hollow might go rampant. Because when Ichigo trained with Shinji, he was using Shikai. He never went Bankai as far as I remember. And I'm 99.99999% sure that he never went Bankai while he was training with Shinji. And he put that mask on all the fucking time. But the second he started using his Bankai in conjunction with his Hollow powers, his Hollow immediately began to evolve. And in the span of a few fights, it reached its original form before it was sealed within Masaki. And I think that something similar could happen with the Visoreds, and they know this. Like, they know that if they try to really push their Hollow powers to the absolute limit, it's either going to make them go rampant again, And we have seen what happens when some guy goes hollow. They are completely fucking insane. And we've seen when someone goes hollow with Bankai activated. That happened to Ichigo when he was fighting Ulquiorra, and he just completely fucking annihilated the guy, and no one could touch him. Like, Ulquiorra's ultimate attacks could do jack shit against him. Like, he couldn't even scratch the guy. The guy destroyed his Lanza de la thing, spear energy, lightsaber spear thing, with his bare fucking hand. Like, can you imagine if all the Visoreds went that way? Like, they could annihilate half the Soul Society easy. Like, they would destroy the place no problem if they went like that. And I think that would realistically happen if they tried to use their Bankai in conjunction with their hollow powers, because Ichigo is kind of like the guy, is kind of the go-to example of this. This happened to Ichigo. He combined his hollow powers and his Bankai. Well, true, they did come from the same power source, but his hollow powers did, in fact, reach new levels, and they did evolve as time went on. And like even in Shikai, or even with their swords sealed, the Visoreds cannot keep their masks on for long periods of time, and they had Ichigo's previous weakness. Now, Ichigo's previous weakness was that if his mask broke the first time, he would be really exhausted, but he would be able to bring his mask back on again. But the second time, it was nowhere near as powerful as the first time, and if it was broken again, he couldn't bring it back at all. And his mask had a time limit that gradually got removed, and after his mask evolved, he was able to bring his mask, up constantly, and as long as his resolve was still there, he was able to use his mask to however length he wanted to. Now, the thing with the other Visoreds is that they clearly said that we can only stay in this form for about 3 minutes, and if they stay in that form for about a minute, they have to wait another minute before their full 3 minutes can get back. So that means if they spend 3 minutes in their hollow masks, they have to wait 3 more minutes for it to kind of recharge. It's kind of like a video game energy bar kind of thing, where you gotta wait for it to recharge as time passes, and it's kind of like a video game if you really think about it. Now, and the sheer power these guys have, just with their swords sealed, or just in Shikai, is fucking insane. Like, when Shinji went to fight Grimjaw, his sword was sealed, and he just activated his mask, and with a single Sero, he almost killed Grimjaw. Like, the amount of, he wasn't using Shikai or Bankai or anything. Shinji, a captain-level soul Visored, just with his mask on, was able to just completely outclass an Espada, a being that is equal or sometimes even greater power to a regular captain. Now imagine if they tried to use that with Bankai activated. I think the strain on their bodies would just be completely insane, and it would probably just completely drain them and leave them exhausted. And now you could say, maybe if they were really desperate they would do that, but the negatives far outweigh the positives if you really think about it, because, like if you really go all out on that one attack, you better damn well make sure that attack works, because if it doesn't, you're fucked. If your enemy survives that and he's still able to fight and come at you, he will kill you, because you're going to be completely helpless. And that's exactly what would happen to the Visoreds, and this is why I think the rest of the Visoreds are never seen using Bankai with their hollow powers. I think the strain on their bodies and on their energy reserves would be too great, and they could probably run the risk of having their hollow go completely rampant. And we've seen with Ichigo what happens when a hollowified Visored with Bankai activated can do. He is just, they would go on another level beyond any being, bar maybe God Aizen and post Dangai Ichigo. So yeah, so you could just chalk this up to bad writing. This is kind of like, this is my theory on as to why the Visoreds don't use Bankai and Hollow Masks. I'm sure diehard Bleach fans are going to find tons of problems with this theory, and like I said, this is a theory. I'm not saying this is a fact. This is just kind of what I think. I think there is some legitimate evidence to prove that this could be the case. I wish Kubo kind of actually said this in the series, so people like me wouldn't have to be here explaining it, but I do think unless someone completely disproves this theory, I think it's a legitimate theory and it can work.